Daleks surrounded by a force field. The bullets are melting before they even hit home, but it's not indestructible.
Thank you, Doctor, but I think I know how to fight one singleton robot. On my mark, open fire!
Hey guys, what's happening? Nihat here with Film Comics Explained, and today we'll be taking a look at the hateful Daleks featured throughout the long-running Doctor Who television series. Since covering the Weeping Angels, also seen in the same series, in a video I'll be leaving a link to below in the description, I've been inundated with requests to dive deeper into the Doctor Who universe by my UK subscribers. So I'm planning on tackling the Doctor and other related elements of the show in the coming weeks, so stay tuned for those videos. But with all that having been said, created by Terry Nation and designed by Raymond Cusick for the second Doctor Who serial, The Dead Planet, which was released in 1963, the Daleks were a warrior race composed of genetically engineered mutants hailing from the planet Skaro. In the series, they are the most recurring antagonists of the Doctor, who they viewed as their mortal enemy, in part due to the Time Lord consistently halting their primary objective of universal domination. They were so popular that in order to help people get used to the changing Doctors throughout the continuity of the show, the Daleks would always be introduced in each serial as a means of helping audiences transition to unfamiliar territory.
While the wind, the Doctor will be here as witness. At the end of everything, the Doctor and his precious children of time.
Their planet Skaro had once been home to two humanoid races known as the Kalids and the Thals, but due to a horrendous 1,000-year war between both sides that saw the Kalids and Thals resort to biological, chemical and nuclear warfare, their once beautiful planet was reduced to an inhospitable wasteland, forcing the survivors to live under domed cities. Out of desperation, the Kalids turned to their chief scientist named Davros, who promised to create a weapon from the ashes of their fallen comrades. And so he began experimenting on living Kalid cells to find an ultimate mutated form of the Kalids that would enable their species to survive. To this end, Davros had encased his experiments into durable tank-like containers composed of Dalekanium and polycarbide armor that could maintain life in designs based on his own life support chair. Their casing, which could also allow them to travel through time without any effect on their living tissue, was split up into three sections. The top of their shell housed a dome with luminosity discharges and a periscope-like eye stalk, which functioned as their means of vision and communication. The midsection, which is where the bulk of their organic mass was housed, also contained a gunstick and manipulator arm, which provided the Daleks with a means of operational and offensive functionality. The bottom was their means of mobility, consisting of a sturdy base with a skirt-like structure of plate studded with globes that enabled them to glide across the floor. And in later models, this was revised to give them the ability to hover and even fly. The interdependence of biological and mechanical parts essentially meant that the Daleks were a type of cyborg. While the creation of this new species was agreed to by the Kalid scientific elite as a way of safeguarding their future, Davros, who had pretty much lost his mind by this stage, had set about intentionally accelerating their mutation. He'd also made alterations to the Dalek genome that turned them into heartless warriors that harbored an innate hatred of all other living beings. As a result of his meddling, the Daleks began a process of exterminating all organic life on Skaro, wiping out most of the Thals and Kalids before commencing their path towards universal domination in the form of the Dalek Empire. Even the Time Lords of Gallifrey saw them as being a significant threat to the universe, and they recruited the Doctor to infiltrate Skaro and prevent the genesis of the Daleks. However, despite their best efforts, the Doctor refused to end the life of millions, even though he knew that doing so would prevent the destruction of countless civilizations under the hands of the Daleks. 5 centuries later, the Doctor, his granddaughter Susan, and companions Barbara and Ian encountered the Daleks once again after getting stranded on the planet Skaro. By this point in time, the Thals had become agrarian pacifists struggling to survive on what few crops they could harvest from Skaro's barren soil, while the Daleks thrived in their city, though they were unable to leave since their casings drew power from the city's metal floors. The Daleks then captured the Time Lord and his fellow time travelers, but they ultimately managed to escape and convinced the Thals to rebel against the Daleks. Despite the seeming defeat, the Daleks somehow returned, and by the time the Doctor re-encountered them, they'd not only developed interstellar travel, but had also invaded and successfully conquered Earth by the mid-22nd century, subjugating almost all of humanity. Nevertheless, the Doctor managed to rally Earth's few resistance fighters and overthrow the Dalek Empire. It is rare for Daleks to have any distinctive personality, and the typical Dalek is best defined by its utter ruthlessness, cruelty, deceptiveness, and above all else, an obsession with racial purity. Throughout the series, the tenacious Daleks have become responsible for the extinction of thousands of races, as well as the destruction of countless worlds and civilizations. They are so deadly that even the virtually omnipotent Time Lords feared them, and rightfully so, as a clash between the two races exploded into a violent, ongoing conflict known as the Time War, which brought the Time Lords to the brink of extinction. Each member of their species adhered to a strict hierarchy and was conditioned to obey the orders of their superiors without question, even in the face of great pain and death. The most fundamental characteristic of their culture and ingrained psychology was the unquestioned belief in the superiority of their race, which they believed gave them license to either exterminate or enslave any other species they came across. The Daleks even regarded those within their own race with minor differences as deviants worthy of extermination, and the civil war between the renegade and Imperial Daleks was a great example of this. Because of their superiority complex and their belief that they had the right to do as they pleased, it was nearly impossible to negotiate or reason with the Dalek, and this single-mindedness is why I believe they were so dangerous, along with their technological power. Although they saw their entire species as superior, the Daleks had a hierarchical system and were typically led by the Dalek Emperor, who served as the overall leader of Skaro and the Dalek Empire. But this was not always the case, as during the Imperial Renegade Dalek Civil War, Davros, the creator of the Daleks, established himself as Emperor of the Imperial Daleks. In the early days of the Daleks, the Black Dalek was the direct second-in-command to the Emperor. Later on, the Supreme Dalek became the Dalek Emperor's subordinate, functioning as a high-ranking general in command of significant operations and planetary occupations. However, in the absence of a Dalek Emperor, Supreme Daleks would often take command, and we see this during the Imperial Renegade Dalek Civil War mentioned earlier, where the Renegade faction was led by a Supreme instead of an Emperor.
2509 player.
Though the creatures within the mechanical casings have varied in appearance over the years, there are two consistent traits among their various incarnations. The first being that they were subjectively hideous and repulsive, and the second, that they are hateful and vicious in temperament. One of the most surprising aspects of the Daleks that I'd found was that they didn't die naturally, with every cell of the organism being genetically hardwired with an impulse to keep on living, even if they were chopped to pieces and left buried for centuries away from their casings. In saying that, they did age, and their bodies continually decayed until it eventually reached a point where it was little more than a mewling, hateful sludge. Incapable of controlling their armor, such decayed Daleks would exit their casings and confine themselves to the sewers of the Dalek cities. It's for this very reason that the Dalek word for sewer was also their word for graveyard. While I must admit that from a quick first glance at their shell and after hearing their go-to line, exterminate, one might assume that the Daleks weren't that threatening. However, all we have to do is take a swift look at their abilities to see that this is far from true. Each member of their species is armed with destructive ray guns, deadly plungers that could scan brainwaves, which along with their super intelligence, bulletproof shell, the ability to fly, and their proficiency at mastering time and space travel made them a force to be reckoned with. The key to their technology was their casing, which, as mentioned earlier, was derived from the Mark III travel machines built by Davros. The eye stalk of the casing bestowed superior vision to the species. The plunger-shaped attachment functioned as a flexible and adaptable limb, while their gunstick could kill or paralyze almost any sentient being in the universe. When the first Doctor met them in the Dalek City, the gunstick seemed to have the same qualities as a human gun, but this changed as their technology became more advanced. So much so that they were able to change the effects of their guns' energy projectiles, with the lowest setting being used to temporarily disable an individual, while the highest setting would reduce a creature to atoms. But the Daleks rarely used that. Instead, they made sure to dial their guns down to the lowest possible setting, and that way, the Daleks would ensure that all of their victims died as slowly and painfully as possible. The Daleks transmitted information using a sort of artificial telepathic network known as the Pathweb, similar to the hive mind of the Borg, which are cybernetic organisms from Star Trek that I've of course already covered on this channel and will also be leaving a link to below. Throughout time and space, there were many Dalek variants that sported different casings, and their specific abilities depend on what features the casings offered. It's because of this that some Daleks donned seismic detectors and flamethrowers where their traditional manipulator arm would be. By the era of the last Great Time War, the Daleks had force fields, and while a well-placed ballistic bullet could destroy previous versions of the Daleks, such bullets would not even get close to the newer casings. But it should be noted that they were still vulnerable to their own weaponry, and not only could they now hover, which enabled them to overcome their past inability to go up a flight of stairs, but the Daleks also developed time travel capabilities, usually in the form of time corridors, which allowed limited transport between one era to another.
Daleks must survive!
The Daleks have failed! Why don't you finish the job and make the Daleks extinct? Rid the universe of your filth! Why don't you just die?
You would make a good Dalek.
Well, that's all for today, folks. A big thanks to all of you guys who requested we take a look at the Daleks featured in the Doctor Who universe. I'd love to cover their history by exploring their numerous conquests, the catastrophic time war, the cult of Skaro, as well as the Dalek Emperor in more detail down the track, so if this is something you'd like to see, please let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to hit subscribe and click the notification icon to stay up to date on all my content, and if there's anything else you'd like to request, please don't hesitate to ask. As always, it's been a pleasure. Niat here with Film Comics Explained. Thanks for stopping by.
What? You want this?